I was a war baby, born in 1942, in February 17, and I was born in Pensacola, Florida. And I was the second child of my mother, who was from Pensacola, and we stayed in Pensacola most of the time when my father was off to war, and that was our home base. So both myself and my younger sister, Lynn, were both born in Pensacola during different wars. Right. And so I was the second child. The brother was born 11 months before me, and he was born in Hawaii, and they left, they were living on Ford Island just left a few months before December 7th. So
before the big day.
Yeah, and Ford Island was pretty much wiped out with all the other things. And so we traveled around as Navy children. We went some of the places I remember. We went to Corpus Christi,
Texas.
Corpus Christi, Texas. I think my father was in training there, just like I was later. We went to.
I'm not going to interrupt you, but just to clarify that pretty much there, I heard Corpus. That's where you start to train to land on carriers.
That's correct. But I was a tactical coordinator, which is not a pilot. It's
But were you trained as a pilot?
No, I was never trained as a pilot.
I was
yeah, I can go through a little bit of that. Jumping to college.
Just curious, but please continue with the timeline.
I'll tell you about that. I ended up graduating from Washington Lee High School in Arlington, Virginia. And
here?
I was, right here, next to Fairfax. And that was a good school. The last 2 years I was there. I was on the track team. I had always wanted to be a pole vaulter. Even when I was young, I had gone over and gotten bamboo sticks off of the water in Florida, in Pensacola, and I would jump all the neighbor hedges with the bamboo sticks. Some of them would complain to my mother to not have me jumping over their fences anymore. But that was something for some reason I just wanted to do. So when I got to high school, I did pole vaulting, and I was fortunate enough to win the indoor championship for the largest schools in pole vaulting. So when I left there, I had 2 partial scholarships to Virginia Tech and William and Mary.
Also here.
And then, also here. And so my father set me down, and this was before computers and everything that was so handy. And he set me down with his green sheet and laid out the scholarships and what it would cost, because it was private schools more or less and everything. And so he said, actually, since we're residents of Florida, it would be cheaper for you to go to Florida, to the University of Florida. So I applied there, was accepted, and they took me to a bus station in D.C., and I got off on Gainesville at a bus station downtown. It was the first time that I had seen the University of Florida. And then I had to drag a trunk.
And you were already going there?
I was already going there.
You didn't tour it first?
No, didn't tour it first or anything. Just
like
go there. Yeah, it was, I knew that it was a good track school, so that interests me a lot to go down there. The thing was, at that time, to make the story shorter, everybody was switching from aluminum poles. They were switching to fiberglass poles. And so it became a different sport then. It was more of a gymnastic sport. When I was there, being taller and faster, you could jump, you had an advantage.
Interesting.
But when it came to the bamboo pole, from the fiberglass poles and all different types of things where it would spring you up. It was better to be smaller and lighter and faster to do that. So I didn't know how I was going to do in college because they were just switching at the university to these fiberglass poles. Huh. So I went there. I went to drag my trunk all the way across campus and at Hume Hall, and then went to register, and I had all 7:30 classes because that was when they did everything for you. So I went and not familiar with anything, and I started going to some of the parties for the where you pledge for a fraternity.
Fraternities.
And I met another freshman there, and we were talking about different things, and he was talking about swimming times, and I was talking about track times. And I said, well, those times don't sound too fast for me. And he says, oh yeah, can you swim? And I said, yes, I can swim.
Like a fish.
And he said, well, how fast can you swim? I said, well, I don't know how fast I can swim, but it's about 4-to-1 for track time versus swimming time. 100 yards in track would be about 9 or 10 seconds, and for swimming it would be like 40 seconds, I thought at that time, but actually it was more.
How old were you at that time when you were thinking like that?
What?
How old were you at that time?
I was 18.
18, okay, yeah.
And actually that was too little. It was more like 5 or 6 times the speed at those times. So he said, look, we just lost our backstroker. Can you swim backstroke? And I said, I think I can. And so I had a swimsuit in the trunk that my mother had packed because they send you a list of everything to bring. And so that was the only reason I had a swim trunk, one of those almost like a surfer's trunk. And so I went, and he said, come out.
A surfer's trunk?
Well, it was long. Went halfway down my leg. Baggy trunk.
What people understand, later on that was the standard.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how they came out. So anyway, sorry.
So we went there. The reason I had the swim trunks on is because they required it, because every person that went to the University of Florida was required to take a swimming test in order to graduate. Right, yeah. You had to, because they felt like so much water in Florida, they felt you had to be able to swim. So that's the reason I had a swim trunk. So I went there to the swim team, and they were all swimming and everything, and the coach says, well, let me see you swim. And I hadn't been in a pool for, I don't know, since I was 12 years old, I guess.
Right,
in a swimming
but you
pool.
don't forget how to ride a bike.
Yeah. But I had, when I was younger, we were stationed, my father was stationed in Fort Island. Later on, during the Korean War, he was facing, when he was flying P-2V squadrons out of Fort Island. And so we lived there. P-2Vs. Yeah. Are a patrol plane bomber.
Okay, sorry.
And so, anyway, that was the second time he was stationed at Pearl Harbor. And so while we were there the second time, then Star was born, my youngest sister.
My mom.
And so, and your mother. And so we went, did a lot of things there as a youngster. And one of the things is we had a pool, a community pool for all the officers' quarters. And so I could just walk out the back of the house and go about 100 yards into the pool. So we all learned to swim very early.
Right, me too.
So when I got to the university, I had no fear of passing any swim test. But this going out, I thought I would go out for the swimming before the track season started. So I went out and swam, and the coach said, "Let me see you swim, the backstroke." But anyway, they must have seen something in me, because they said, "Okay, we want you to come out and practice with us."
Well, you're super tall, big hands, feet. You can fly in the water.
Yeah, and so I had at that time the freshmen and not the scholarship swimmers would more or less swim in the gutter lanes on the outside, and the varsity would be in the center. So anyway, by the time I finished the freshman year, I had set all the freshman backstroke records at the university, and they offered me a full scholarship. And I was fortunate to be one of the best backstrokers in the country. I had set Southeast Conference records 3 years and all 3 years, and beating my own conference records. During the summer, it was very interesting because my family had gone to Coronado, California. My father was there. He was a captain at the time and was in charge of some type of a training unit out of there. And so I went there, and I was...
And what year is this?
This was summer of '62. And so I went and did tried out for the lifeguards, so I was a lifeguard at the Coronado Beach.
And by the way, just so I know, and other people, I'm telling you right now, to be a lifeguard just on Maryland shores or Virginia shores, it's a hell of a tryout. Like you have to be in shape. So I don't know, the tryout to be that lifeguard, I think, was tough. Yes.
Well, it wasn't too tough for me because I was in good shape.
But right. But I want to be clear about it's not an easy thing to do.
Right.
Yeah.
And I had at that time at the university, I was trained in first aid and all this kind of things that helped.
Stops. Yeah, that never stops.
So I was a lifeguard, and I started surfing, because that's a big thing in California. And so I really got hooked up on surfing. And every minute off, I was surfing. And then went back to the University of Florida as my sophomore year, and back into swimming. And I had started as in business, but I found out that the time that we had to swim in practices sometimes twice a day, and in those days there was no eye protection. So
the salt water.
Well, it was chlorine, it was chlorine. This was the pool. Yeah. When I went back to the university, the pool.
Eyes are red.
Yeah, no protections. The protection for swimmers didn't come in until the early '70s, like '72. So with bloodshot eyes, and after late in the day swimming, going in and trying to read a lot of chapters and different things and study for tests. Plus we were gone a lot too. Yeah. So we would miss classes, and we'd be traveling for 3 days sometimes. Yeah. So I switched my major. You have to keep a minimum in the Southeast Conference, like a 2.3 or something like that.
Yeah, GPA, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, you have to have a minimum, absolute minimum, in order to participate in a sport type of a thing. So I switched my major to physical education with a emphasis on recreation, and my idea was to be in recreation and parks. And so later I went into
That's what I want. It kind of blows my mind a little bit. I was right there with you. I thought, anyway, continue. I'll earmark that.
Yeah.
And because I really wanted to do that, I thought at one point, you know what? I'm done with war. I'm done with all this stuff. It'd be really cool just to be out in nature and and support what Theodore Roosevelt made for us. Yeah.
Well, I think maybe you probably got a lot of that from where you lived out in the woods.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah. People don't appreciate and understand that.
Yeah.
When you just sit there, just watch.
Yeah, I could have been a park ranger and been very happy.
I understand that completely.
Yeah. So
sorry.
Anyway, we went on to that. And in my senior year, I met my future wife. And we went on a blind date, which was set up by a swimmer's girlfriend that they were in the same dorm. And so I had seen my wife in the library, Sybil Mobley. I saw her at the end of a table studying, and she had a pigtail, and I was very, I saw her, I thought, I'd really like to date her. I was in the library because one of the core courses at the university is where you have to take civics, where you take event.
Right.
And we had to go to the library to listen to a lot of composers and different ones, Mozart and all this type of stuff, because they would give us tests on these things. So we had to go listen to those records. And so that's why I saw her, because otherwise I wouldn't have been in the library.
I never heard
But I was too shy, I didn't go over and talk to her. But then it just happened that we had that her friend in the dorm was dating a swimmer. And she wanted to date me, and I wanted to date her, so we went out. And that was the end of my junior year.
What was her name?
Her name was Sybil Mobley. Mm-hmm. And she was a journalism at that time at the university studying journalism. And she was a year behind me. So anyway, after, in my junior year, I received a letter from my draft board in Pensacola saying that I was deferred until I graduated, and then I was to report to, I think, one of the Army, Fort Dixon or something like that.
Louisiana, somewhere, Georgia.
And that as soon as I graduated, they would draft me. So I took that letter right down to a Navy recruiter, because I was familiar with the Navy. Mm-hmm. And
naturally.
And said, what have you got? I've got this, can I get out of it? And they said, oh yeah, you're not signed up with him yet, you sign up with us.
How old were you at this time?
I was...
18, 19?
No, I was 19, 20.
20.
19 or 20.
I was 20 when I joined the military as well.
Yeah.
I turned 21 in boot camp.
Yeah. That's about what I did too.
My parents, your sister, sent me a wallet with a big EGA, Eagle Globe and Anchor.
Right.
So the drill instructor's like, what's this for? What's this for, boy? I said, it's just Ruth's birthday. And he goes, it's your birthday?
Yeah.
And he went, and I was like, yes, sir. And he goes, fly away, LeJour. But interesting stuff when you had to deal with Marine drill instructors.
Yeah. Well, we
kind of things like that. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but it just kind of reminded me of that moment. Like, man, I was 20 when I went to the military, which helped me a lot. Not that mature in any sense, but more within the 17, 18, 19-year-olds that were there. Yeah.
Well, I didn't know a lot about the military except as being, traveling around with my father, who was mostly gone. But I knew I didn't want to be in the Army. So they gave me a bunch of tests and showed me a bunch of things with airplanes upside down and all around and everything else. And then they said, okay, you can apply for this new program with the test you've taken, and it's called the Naval Flight Officer Program. because I told them I don't have perfect eyesight in my right eye. And in the Navy, they would not allow any, any type of, because they were afraid your glasses would fall off on a mission or on a carrier when you landed or something. So this program was for naval flight officers, which they found out that the pilot could not handle all of the missions requirements.
The tasks.
Yeah, they couldn't handle the communications, the
I heard
weapons.
It's called the airplane gets ahead of you. Is that right? Like you get
the mission gets ahead
of your tasks.
Yeah, the mission gets ahead of them as far as trying to fly the airplane and keep track of all the instruments,
which is navigation, height, fuel.
Yeah, navigation, right? Fuel, especially the weapon systems and the navigation. So they came up with these. Basically, you're the in a jet. You're the RIO. You're the
RIO.
RIO is you're the intercept officer for a fighter, where you're going to lock in on the target and you're going to fire.
Like a backsetter in
else. F4. Yeah, the backsetter in F4. You sit side by side with a pilot. And,
with your timeline, where does that put you?
Well, after that, as far as I was to go, I had no idea what the NFO program was, even though it was fairly new.
And a quick question, did you know, because of granddad's history, that you were going to be involved in aviation? Like, were you determined to be involved in aviation?
Well, I wanted to fly, but I knew already that you had to have perfect vision, and I had 20, 35, 20, 40 in my right eye, so type of thing. So, but this sounded like great, I wanted to be an officer in the military, and flying if I could. So it sounded like a great program.
Sure.
So I ended up, and it was going back to my hometown,
which was
Pensacola, Florida, where all of the naval aviation training takes place. The initial. So I went there and got my wife, who was a year behind me. We decided to get married as soon as I graduated in December of '64.
Okay.
Because it was another quarter after I would have normally graduated, because we were traveling so much and doing swimming all over that they said that, especially for my senior year, they said, you need to take 12 hours. We'll increase your scholarship for another quarter if you take that, because you're going to be gone so much.
Understood.
So we did that. So I graduated then. And so I got married as soon as I graduated to Sybil. That was 1964 in December. And we're going to be married 60 years this December. And we, as soon as we got married, we went and worked in her relative's store selling, because I had a car then, but we had about $50, between us. And so we worked in the store, get enough money, get over to Pensacola.
Yeah.
And then went over to Pensacola. And it worked out very well, because my mother had bought a house in Pensacola. And then when my father came back from different wars, they added, my grandfather was also there, Coma Shaw. And
can you say it again, please?
Coma, C-O-M-A, Shaw. And he was, my mother's father.
Name is Shaw, you know that.
Yeah, the Shaws. And that's why my middle name is Shaw, Richard Shaw Farwell.
Yeah, Devin Shaw LeJour.
So it comes back.
Sorry to interrupt.
Right. Too many.
There's a lot of cross sections.
Yeah, a lot of coincidence here. So we went, and they had built a garage apartment. for them to live there. And so Sybil and I, and they were renting it out, and they lived in the main house. So we went to that garage apartment, and which was right outside the base, which worked out well. So I had to go through 16 weeks of training as a cadet.
It's not small.
And before I could get a commission, I had to pass that first. And that was all
like OCS, Officer Candidate School.
Officers. It was a little different because it was all Marine sergeant instructors, and it was basically it was very little. There were some classes for aviation and so forth for aerodynamics and navigation, things like that. But it was mostly physical fitness, getting used to the military, being on time, being on shape.
If you're not 15 minutes early.
And being gun-ho.
Yeah.
You were, so at the end of that 16 week, I was commissioned a ensign. And out of thousands of us that were out on a parade field, when I went up and got my ensign, they announced that I had the highest physical fitness score
Runs in the family,
of all of the candidates that were there, which surprised me. But
myself as well.
Yeah, I didn't.
Not about you, but I feel like it runs in the family.
I didn't. I didn't.
Try for it. Or like
the pull-ups and push-ups and standing broad jump and all that. I felt like I was kind of average.
Midway.
But the obstacle course I could nail, the swimming I could nail, and I won the cross country.
Yeah.
So I was.
But
I never fought.
What's the cross country?
Yeah, we went up and through the woods and up and down a hill. It was a designated course, but it was cross country. But I think it was only like a mile and a half. So
right,
it wasn't
but the treacherous terrain, up and down.
Yeah, it was up and down for Florida as much as you can get.
Yeah,
but it was not.
All I hear is cottonmouths everywhere. But
no, that wasn't.
I'm joking.
It was. Yeah, I would not say it was treacherous lane at all.
So now that you're talking, you've graduated.
I graduated.
And now you're an ensign, and let's say, where do you want to pick up? You're going to flight school.
Yeah, well, I went to.
Or no, how did that even happen?
Yeah, well, I had to go to.
Because your father was a pilot, or.
Yeah, I went to. You have to go through other training where you have to learn Morse code. You have to learn the flags, and you have to learn how to spot different ships and different aircrafts, whether they're Chinese, whether they're Russian, because the Chinese used a lot of Russian MiGs and so forth.
It's the same as identifying my targets. Just the same way they identified. They're like, hey, they would show me a picture, and you had about 30. You had about not even. What am I talking about? You had 4 seconds.
Yeah, and then you had to name what it was.
And you say enemy or foe, and you're looking for. If we got a forward bore evacuator, like a tank or something like that, or the primary target.
Yeah, but we were ships and aircraft, and so and electronics. We did a lot of electronics then.
That was the news.
And so after graduated, we went to Corpus Christi. My wife and I went to Corpus Christi, and that was advanced training. And that training was advanced, just about all flying and all navigation, where you did a lot of different navigations by sight.
It's amazing the parallels, because you graduate boot camp, and as an infantry marine, I went to AIT, or SOI, School of Infantry, which was advanced training.
Right.
Same thing. So you graduate, you go, and then you learn some real flying, right?
Right. And then from there, I got orders to VP Squadron, VP 40 in Coronado, California. So that was good because I was already familiar with Coronado. I'd been a lifeguard out there during the summers. So we went out there, and I was assigned to a seaplane squadron. This was seaplanes SP-3Bs. It was a very large gold wing, 2 reciprocating engine, like a gull. Yeah, the wings were on top.
Yeah.
And so I was not familiar with seaplanes. I didn't even know the Navy had seaplanes. But I was sent to the squadron, and I went there as a navigator and tactical coordinator, but I had to qualify. I was already a navigator. I had to qualify for a tactical coordinator before we shipped out to Cam Ranh Bay, Vietnam.
Cam Ranh Bay. Very
but
famous. A quick question before you go on. Did you ever have to qualify as a pilot, so everything goes to shit? That can fly the airplane, or is that just... No.
No, I didn't have to fly the airplane at all. I mean,
Again,
later when we were doing training or so forth, they would let me fool around with it. But
understood.
Because they would want to. And I'll give you a quick example, because I would tell them to do a heading. I'd say to come to 243, you know, and so one time they called me up here. I was still ensign, I was still new. They called me up. They said, "Okay, sit down here in the co-pilot's thing. Now, I want you to come to whatever it was, 243 or 242, and come on in there. And you have this big ball that goes, and you could see, there's no way in the world you can hold 2 or 3 degrees on there." So you said, okay,
that was a trick,
at the least make it 5 or 10, you know, whatever, and then make your adjustments to the things, because we can't hold a 1 degree or 2 degree type of thing. So, you know, it was kind of a learning experience for me.
Which is
on that.
Invaluable. Yeah.
So anyway, I was that, and that was an anti-submarine squadron. All patrol planes are basically anti-submarines. And so we like cats.
That's my buddy. You see how he busted in the door like that? I thought it was a person.
I did. You got the cats rule, don't you? Yeah, you do.
Well, I just appreciate his. That's my buddy.
Yeah.
Razor had mine all messed up. He just did nothing but sleep on the back of my neck.
Yeah, I had a cat just like this, the same color, when I was in Hawaii on Fort Island.
Yeah.
And I really liked
so
them.
fond of her.
So, in training in Coronado, I had to, for some reason, I was the second in command of the squadron. I was a tactical coordinator. These seaplanes, they only had 2 engines, but each engine was a huge reciprocating engine. Each one had 7,500 horsepower each. So we had 15,000 horsepower on the seaplane.
Christ.
And and it was a 12-man crew, 3 pilots, and 1 navigator tactical coordinator. And so we did a lot of training on finding submarines. There's a big tail they call the stinger out the back of these planes.
And that's the reason I was so happy Brian was here, but he got busy. But later I confused him in because that was his job. He was a submariner.
Yeah.
And so I always wanted to hear like your take on killing subs and his take on getting the hell away from being killed.
Yeah.
But that's pretty much what subs do.
Yeah.
Try not to get killed.
The stinger out the back of all the patrol planes is magnetic. It senses very small magnetic forces under the water. And we also had a sniffer. And hello, you're beautiful. Yeah, you are, with those green eyes. You have hazel eyes like I do.
I'll tell you, that's unusual. He likes you. It's weird.
He knows I like cats.
Yeah, I appreciate their agility and their. God, if you can only be like that. But anyway, sorry.
So anyway, and we did a lot of training finding submarines, and they would go out there and that type of thing. And then we shipped off. I was there about 6 weeks in training. We made an alpha crew, and so the whole squadron goes over. But we don't take our planes. We go over to
and use their planes.
We go over to and switch with the other squadron. We go to Subic Bay in the Philippines.
Yeah, I've been there.
And and that's
I
where
just can't believe
that's where the
how little changes.
they would switch all the tail numbers and for our squadron, and then we'd fly over to Cameron Bay, and there was a seaplane tender there that could actually lift up one of our planes.
Right.
For maintenance, and we had 6 of us there. There were 6 of the planes out of 12 would be there for about 6 or 7 weeks, and then we would rotate. The other 6 would come out, and we would have to live in the seaplane tender and so forth. But our mission then was different. It wasn't for any submarines.
Yeah, right.
Sometimes we would go out and take pictures of the Russian shipping,
whatever they were doing, and they were supplying what the Vietnamese.
They had SAM missiles on top of you could see them and everything, and they were just loading up.
So to sort of move, and you were telling me, I think yesterday at dinner, you were telling me about
right.
We were I talked about the 240 Golf, and when I was a brand new Marine from the country, I'd shot plenty of 30-06s and everything. But when I saw the power of that, it was just such a wake up. Even though Marines, infantry Marines, and everything on there, like, it's a 240 Golf, man. You know, you get used to it. But you do get used to it. But the first time you see it, it's an eye opener. Like, as a pilot, you had to see 25 mil, 30 millimeters. These rounds are this big, and you know, they wreck houses and homes, and I don't mean it like that, but I mean they're big enough to destroy things on a large scale, and it's shocking, and it's exciting, and it's invigorating.
Yeah, well, so, I think the Marines had me really psyched up from that 16 weeks of training, and I really appreciate that, because I think if I'd have gone through a regular, you know, what they call swabby school, you know, I would have not had the appreciation or the gun ho that I had for going into it. And
water, you're going to be fine. All right, killer. Now move out.
And so we would fly, but most of the time we were trying to intercept shipping, sampans taking mainly gasoline up the rivers resupply the Viet Cong. Well, there was a whole bunch of them. We would fly sections and cover sections with the rivers at any time we could fly really low and slow. We could almost
fly
like
an A-10. But you had the turboprops though, 4.
No, we only had those 2 reciprocating.
Oh.
They were 2 reciprocating engines ran off of, and so we could go like 100.
I don't want to mess you up, but explain what reciprocating, because a lot of people don't know.
Yeah, they were gas. Instead of having a gas engine or that
piston,
a turboprop is where you have a jet engine that runs the props basically, and the reciprocating engine is where you have a whole a circle of pistons that produce the power just like a car, a 6-cylinder car.
For people my age, you would see it in Bugs Bunny with the the circles all around the engine.
Right.
Yeah. Wow.
But they were
like a DC-10.
With what?
Like a DC-10. Did it look like that?
No, not exactly like that.
Yeah.
It was a.
Well, I'll throw a picture.
Yeah, it was pretty. It was a plane that was started. It was made by Marlin Aircraft Company, and it was called a Marlin. And it was started. I think the planes we were flying in the '60s were made in the '50s. So it was fairly an older plane.
Should have been a Marine. Gear I carried in 2004 was gear they made in 1980. Sometimes, but it got better.
So anyway, and we would do shipping. We would go low and slow, so we could identify whether it was
and smoke them.
something that needed to be taken out or not, We had 60 millimeter machine guns. We had rockets all on the wings and everything else. But most of the time, we would call in a PT boat. That sometimes they would be there and to stop them and that. But you could tell if they were low in the water and how much and fishing nets all over the place.
The rims right at the he's not carrying fish. Right. He's probably got a lot of rockets or something.
So I can say that thank goodness we never made a mistake. There was always a lot of secondary gas blowing up and everything else, But most of the time we would put a 60 millimeter, shots along their bow, and they would come out and wave, and then we'd put another round around it. And most of the time they would beach and get out of the way before we could take them out.
Right.
So that, I guess they had learned by that time that they weren't going to get by with it. So we did that, and then I did that for a couple deployments, 2 6-month deployments, and so that was really good. We had to rotate, officers had to rotate spending the night on the plane, and we would sleep on the wings. We'd go out the hatch, sleep on the wing, and then we had to randomly throw percussion grenades into the water, and we were looking for bubbles or anything else for anybody that were scuba divers trying to take us out. And then if we thought we saw something, or on a random schedule, there would be these percussion grenades that would they would kind of,
it'd be pretty impressive if they had that
water. Yeah, but they did. As soon as you get there, as soon as you get there on the radio, Hanoi Rose would start saying, "Welcome, BP-40, welcome to you," and your.
This was propaganda.
Yeah, all propaganda. Okay. And so
Hanoi Rose. Listen, Uncle, I've not heard Hanoi Rose. I've heard other things.
Yeah,
but a lot of guys like you might know about Hanoi Rose.
So. And so we, anyway, so that was 2 deployments of doing that. And then I guess the only time that I felt very safe in the P3, because, the SP-5B seaplane, I felt safe because there was a lot of water and stuff. If we got shot down,
we could land.
We had our fuel tanks were self-sealing. We would take small arm fire, but thank goodness that where we were, they didn't have any missiles to shoot at us. I did have one incident where I had one bullet come into the cockpit and through the belly of the plane and through a couple level and bounced around and ended up right in front of me.
Spinning?
No, it was spinning this way and came into it, and good, I got a souvenir. And then in debriefing, they took it away from me.
Of course, because they wanted to examine it. But what in reality, it was just
it was a pretty safe plane. Yeah, I felt pretty good. And then we went back and to Coronado, and the whole squadron moved to Moffett Field. Moffett Field, we went into P3s, and P3s were. I would have a navigator. I was already qualified as tactical coordinator, which is like the quarterback of a mission.
So let me ask you this: as a Marine, we used to call, "Hey, stack them up." We say, "Stack them." We get some people you're getting engaged, and so we start stack them up, and I would talk to an air boss, or I would talk to a FAC, forward air controller, or somebody like that, and they're clearing, and then they would stack airplanes. They would have these guys flying in these crazy patterns, and then way on top of that, you'd have an AWACS guy telling you what's going on.
Doing the controls and so forth.
And then these guys would spiral in as you needed them. Is that?
No, we didn't do that.
As an air, okay.
We had individual missions, so we flew individual. And we would have certain missions. I think one of the more exciting missions that I had in the seaplane before we went to the P3s is that one day they called us in because we're flying all the time at Rest Fly. And then they called us on the ship. We went to a briefing for a special mission. I didn't know what it was. And then they told us. And it was only, and we couldn't tell the crew what it was. And they told us, you're going to transport somebody up. They told us they were SEALs. At that time, they were called UDT.
Frogmen.
Yeah, Frogmen UDT.
Underwater.
You're going to take a group of 5, and you're going to take them up, and you're going to land them right off of the Hanoi Beach, just south of Hanoi Harbor.
What year was this?
This was 68, I
Woo,
believe.
that's the height of it.
And so they said, and you're going to land in a minefield.
And
it was, they said, there won't be a problem because you will have an aluminum hull, and that's why you can do this. And so and no lights, no communications, no any activity, no radar, no anything. You're going to have to navigate into this particular spot right here, and you're going to let them off and go. So I had to navigate that. Everything was blacked out.
We had let them off. What do you mean?
To land and let them get on to.
Did you ever stop?
We had to go down, stop. We turned around so that they could exit towards the beach.
Sure.
And I don't know, maybe we were 400 yards off or something like that.
The water?
Off the beach. I could see the beach pretty clearly, but we were pretty far away also. As we were going in, I had to go down and make sure that the raft was inflated outside of the aircraft. We had to take our M60 machine gun out so they could get out. And so
we got about a minute.
Ran out.
No, we're still going.
Okay.
Yeah, still listening.
But I see this one's not.
Nope, I got you right here.
Okay. So
we're gonna fuse them.
Yeah, and so we, I could see the fleet out. All the carriers and the lights way out there and everything else. And since we weren't broadcasting a friendly, that we were friendly, I was concerned about they would not know we're friendly and they weren't communication, but apparently it was okay because they never came after us. But we had to land in this spot just using passive navigation. And so we landed there, turned around, 5 of them got out. We were told we can't talk to them, don't talk to them, say anything to them.
Yeah, because they're running heroin.
Yeah, and they were all camouflaged up and dark, and so they took their weapons and they got in the raft and they took off paddling towards the beach. And once they were maybe 50 yards away, then we took off again and went back. And that was, I liked that. You know, that was, I felt good that we were doing something.
Feel like you're making a difference.
Yeah, but I don't know who picked them up. Hopefully a helicopter or somebody or I don't know.